Welcome to Faith in Focus, the radio show that brings you closer to the heart of faith-based living. Each week, we shine a spotlight on how faith influences all aspects of our lives, from worship to social justice. We've got an inspiring lineup today with segments like Faith in Action, where we explore the ways faith shapes the world around us, Christian artist and music spotlight, celebrating the talents of those who use their gifts to uplift and inspire, Christian perspectives on law, offering insightful reflections on how our faith intersects with legal matters, and prayer and reflections, where we take time to pause, reflect, and connect with God. Stay tuned as we explore how faith can transform our hearts and the world. And here's your host.
Today I have with me Miss Morgane Freeman, who is a Kansas City, Missouri native and the creator of the Young Black Misses podcast, a lifestyle show focusing on marriage, money, and food. By day, she works in social media, and by night, she dedicates her time to podcasting and blogging. Morgane is passionate about cooking, often sharing plant-based recipes and sustainable living tips on her blog. Welcome, Miss Morgane Freeman.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Super excited for this chat.
Yes, so let's get straight into it. Can you tell us how your Christian faith influenced your approach to mental wellness, and in what ways has it provided support during challenging times?
Wow, such a major question. I feel like I take it back to being a church girl. I was thinking about that a lot here recently. I grew up in the AME, African Methodist Episcopal Church. My church home was Bethel AME. It was just a super large church at the time. It felt so big for me, going every Sunday, Saturdays and Wednesday. You had a Bible study, and you might have a little choir rehearsal. And even at that time, not realizing how much that foundation really helped me in my 30-somethings, because when I turned 25, I believe, it might have been 24, 25, I kind of forget, I realized that I was having some issues. I was having audible hallucinations, and that's when I was diagnosed. I like to say that I thrive with bipolar disorder, but I found out that I was diagnosed with a mental illness or disorder. And I leaned so heavy into my faith. First kind of questioning, kind of thinking, why is this happening? But then feeling like it has always been my superpower. Because a part of my, like I said, thrivingness is I hear music. And I love that component. And sometimes my doctor's like, we need to turn the medicine to that. No, we need to hear the music. Mm-hmm. And I feel like all through the while, like anything that I struggle with at work or at home or whatever the case may be, that music is so calming to me. And I think that being able to just talk about and share my story about how mental health has really just been I feel like I never knew that it was a thing, but I was probably the right person to be in it. I didn't mention this very important point. When I was diagnosed, I was actually working at a mental health nonprofit. And I was learning a lot about it. I think I just been there maybe 6 months or so. I was still kind of learning my role. And then I feel like my manager saw that I was struggling, and she immediately went into how do we help our clients mode? And they were always talking about how to stop the stigma of mental health. And right there, I was the perfect example that there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's no issues. It's just a part of who you are, just like your physical well-being, your mental well-being. And all along, that faith that was pouring into me as a little church girl, really fast forwarding, helped me cope in times where it felt like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to push forward with this diagnosis. How am I going to feel normal again? But God was like, you're the one to do it. And it is so crazy and such a blessing to still be able to talk about this topic after so many years of opening up about it on my podcast, Young Black Misses, where I've spent the whole mini season just really going through all how mental health impacts me on a daily basis. So I kind of hope that opened up your question a bit.
Yes, it did. And that's so real. Mental health is a part of who we are, and we just have to learn how to cope with it and navigate life with it. Um,
Absolutely. And I
as,
feel like people don't always acknowledge
mhm.
that's just a part. Like you go to the doctor if you're bleeding. You should go to the doctor if you're sad. It's just the same type of health concern, right?
Yeah.
And I hope at some point that it will just feel like that. It won't be a shameful thing. Still breaking this, stopping the stigma. It's kind of funny. I'm looking at a picture from that organization that says "Take a bite out of the stigma." So that's just a little God wink of how he's just saying, "You were there for a reason," you know. So
Yeah, I understand that. And as a Black woman, have you encountered any cultural stigmas or misconceptions about mental health within your community or church? And how have you navigated these challenges?
oh, absolutely. I tend to say, like, and this is going to sound however it's going to sound. I have a friend, and we were both diagnosed around the same time. But then there was also a woman that I grew up, or she kind of mentored me in the church. And in hindsight, I would say bipolar understands bipolar. So when I look at her now versus how I felt about her as a child, I understood that she was dealing with her own situation, her own mental health, that she couldn't be the person that she wanted to be. I think the biggest thing that I've had to overcome is just not being embarrassed to talk about it. It's just not being embarrassed to be like, yeah, I have racing thoughts. Yes, I have audible hallucinations that sound like music to me, but if they don't sound just like music to me, that's a concern. And I hear music. I see like colors, things dance. My brain is just working differently, but that doesn't make me any less of capable to do a job or to be a functioning person. But as far as it comes with the faith aspect, obviously it was just like, girl, just pray it away. God will heal you. I believe God can heal you from your depression. And honey, I believe God can heal you from those things as well. I do. But I also feel like God has given us counselors and medical professionals that are able to help us along that healing journey to be able to be in a more manageable state with our mental illness or our mental health in general. And I want to pause for a second and kind of just say why I kind of differentiate that, because I know I have an illness, but everyone should focus on their mental health. Like, it's just because I have a diagnosis, I know I have a mental illness, but all have mental health that they should consider and think about. And I feel like as I continue on, just in my faith, I'm noticing more people aren't afraid of talking about that topic of mental health. Maybe not so much mental illness. I'd love to see that more. I get so passionate and excited when I see a preacher that does a whole sermon series on mental illness, because after we've come out of this pandemic, this season of loneliness, our mental health is so impacted. And as I see more people kind of walking away from faith for whatever reason, now more than ever, I feel like as a people, as Americans, as, just people in general, we need that guiding light, that Christ Jesus in our life. And if we're judging or othering someone because of it, that's only going to hurt us. It's not bringing followers to Christ by pushing that back. And I will say that when I first found out about the diagnosis, I felt I didn't want to go to church because I was ashamed. I didn't want to be in that space because I didn't know what was going on with me. So coping with that, the first 2 years or so was such a struggle. But as I continue to share my story, because I feel it's so important, no matter what you deal with, sharing your testimony, sharing your story with others normalizes it. And so I feel that's how I've been able to cope.
That is so amazing. And I hope those listening out there really take in what you said, because coping, everybody has their ways, and sometimes we get lost in finding our ways too.
Yeah.
What self-care routines or practices have you found particularly beneficial for maintaining mental wellness, and how do they align with your day-to-day life?
Oh, oh, friend. I feel like my self-care routine has shifted because I'm a newish mommy. I have a she's about to be one here pretty soon, and so that shifted a lot from what I was doing before because time, right? But the most important things for me, I love my, what is that, YouVersion Bible app. I like to listen to that in the morning. There's like a devotion on there the person will talk to you and they'll speak the scripture. And then there's a moment where you can pray through. I love that. That's like 5 to 10 minutes. I'm solid. I usually try to like multitask a little bit and pump while I'm listening to it. A couple of other things that I love to do, journaling. That has been so impactful and so therapeutic as I'm coping with other things outside of just my diagnosis, other parts that stressors in life that happen. Journaling has been so impactful. And it's so funny because when I was a kid, I would journal, this boy liked me, or he shook my hand funny or smiled at me, and not thinking about you recalling your day, how therapeutic that can be, even just reading it back. I will say this, I struggle to be able to have my daughter, and she's such a wanted being. And so I journal kind of like a prayer journal to God, just praying to be a mother. And so looking back at that journal really has just shown me how far God has taken me. Because at the end, I would, write whatever was going on with that day. And then I would write my prayer requests and what I trust God to do for me. And doing that and just seeing how he's kept me, seeing how he's been able to move me forward to be able to have her. It's therapeutic, it's healing, and it's just a way to calm and unwind. I also really enjoy a good, funny TV show. Just kicking back with some good food. You had mentioned earlier, I love to cook. I've been vegan or plant-based for at least 5 to 6 years now. So I just really like to throw down in the kitchen. I'm making a lentil bowl tonight. It's going to be yum, yum, yum. So that is also a part of my overall wellness routine. I don't think it takes much. I don't think we need a 5 steps to get to the calming or the zen. Although I do like a guided meditation every now and then. I think it's really whatever helps you center, in my case, whatever helps me feel closest to God, but also what things that help me just relax and kind of shut my brain off. I think that's the place to start.
I completely agree, especially with the funny TV show. I have stopped recently, and maybe I should get back on that because I realize I've been tired waking up, which is weird. So let me get back on my Zoom watching my funny TV shows. I religiously used to watch it every night before I go to sleep. A stressful day, you sit back, you relax, you watch a funny TV show, and you go to sleep stress-free and relaxed.
Yes. Yes. Or funny podcasts.
Yes.
That's why we keep listening to your podcast or my podcast, Young Black Misses, just for the giggles,
Yeah.
It's just something to unwind. It's probably better to not have screens on in my mind, but yeah, since I've had my daughter, she was in the room with us for a while, me and my husband, and I put a little black sheet over the TV and just got used to kind of listening to the TV like that. So I guess not as much light in your face, I suppose, but whatever, just because there's a lot going on in this world. And so we need a giggle, we need real quick. And I truly believe that. I think I told myself my goal when I'm like 40, which I got a little time, is to do stand up. We'll see about that.
Yeah. How important is community, whether it's your church, family, or friends, in your mental health journey? And what advice would you give to others who might not have that sort of community around them?
Yes. So, I've really, truly been struggling with friends in this new season of life. So I don't like to say I was raised, but I was watched heavily by my grandmother. May she rest, because she is shining on me in heaven, right? Heavily watched by my grandmother when I was probably infancy to maybe five, whatever you can get to, like pre-K or whatever. I would say 5 or 6 or something like that. So I say all that to say I'm really comfortable around people 50, 60 years. No, I'm just kidding. I'm comfortable around people that are much older than me. And I'm seeing that in my daughter a little bit too, because I'm blessed to have like other people to watch her throughout the day that are like her grandma or her great godmother to watch her, or just family to watch her throughout the day. And I feel like that has really benefited me because it has allowed me to be able to, just from being able to speak to different people from all different walks of life in a corporate setting is very helpful. But a lot of those people that are around me are strong Black Christian women that are just rooted in prayer. My grandma was such a quiet spirit, but there was such strength in her. I won't say silence, but there was such strength in that softness, I suppose. And then just seeing people through my church and through auxiliaries of other churches that I'm affiliated with, or other entities I'm affiliated with. I'm a part of a sorority as well. So just having those type of circles, those communities, have really benefited me. But I say all that to say, and I know I reach out. I try to. I try to do like a Wednesday check-in or weekly check-in with folks just to really feel that community, because it's like I mentioned, this loneliness epidemic is real, and people are hurting, people are sad, people are feeling lonely. And that shouldn't be the case. And it's ironic you kind of brought this up, because I'm moving into my next season of my podcast, Young Black Misses, and I'm going to start exploring friendships at different phases of your life. I'm in my 30s, and making friends in my 30s is way different than it was in tens, when you were 10 or when you were in your 20s and et cetera, probably when you're in your 40s or whatever. But it's so crucial. So right now, what I'm learning is the obvious, like to be a friend, to have a friend, you have to be friendly, right? And that's hard for a person that, and I might shock you, but I'm very introverted. But I can see how just being friendly can open up the doors. I was participating in a breastfeeding support group, as I've been trying to figure that whole component out. So I met someone through that group, and we kiki and kind of text and chat. And that's been good to have that support group. But I also want your listeners to know you can find people that are within your similar life stage. Say you're a new mom like me, or maybe you just started this new job. Tap in and see if there's any people that are like young professionals or something directly within your industry. I'm in marketing, so I tend to go to a lot of marketing or social media kind of organizations to really tap in and make friends and connections as well. I think that's finding what you're interested in. That's helpful. It's almost like dating when you're over in your 30s, trying to find a friend. But that is so important to your walk. Like church groups as well, or like your small groups as well within the church. That's so important to your walk just in life, because we're not meant to do this thing alone. We are meant to be in community with others. And that really helps build the foundation to continue in your walk with Christ. I remember my pastor, she would say, like, we were talking about a book and how, I don't naturally lead into, like, if I'm having an issue, I don't naturally go to the word. I tend to go to one of my church mothers that I had mentioned to you, because I said there's some strong, soul-filled Black women. They're going to lead me back to the word, and that's going to continue to fill my cup. And I hope that that'll continue and then I can be that for somebody else. I really think it's just about finding your interest and then not being afraid to be a friend. That's what I'm learning.
That is great. Honestly, community is important. And I know they say it takes a village to raise a child. But
Yeah,
we're adults, so we're not kids. But that doesn't take away the fact that it's important. And you mentioned your daughter having, her great godmother and her grandmother to be there to, um I don't want to say kind of relive what you went through as a child being raised by your grandmother.
but in a way, absolutely. And I feel like my daughter looks a lot like me, so I think my mom seeing maybe me a little bit in my daughter's got to be like a a mind trick, like, oh no, but that's not her, that's that's my grandbaby or whatever. So that's the beauty of being a mother. It's like you kind of get to live it again, but not really, because I don't have to go to middle school, praise sweet, because nobody wants to do that.
Nobody wants to do that.
No.
Lastly, I want to ask you, what advice, what guidance would you offer to other Black Christians who are beginning their new journey toward mental wellness?
Absolutely. Well, I definitely think that journaling is the best place to start. And I feel like people say that a lot, like, oh my God, journaling, what am I going to write about? Even if you start with how I was saying about the prayer journal, where I would literally just write a few sentences about what happened that day. And then my words, I'd be like, here's what I trust you for. That's my way of being like, God, this is what I need you to work on in this life, but here's what I trust you to do. And then, as always, I like to end that with this, like a scripture, just like affirming, God, you said in such and such scripture that you'll do such and such, just to kind of affirming his word, to me in that journaling, or, if you Google schmoogle, a lot of guided prompted journals as well could be really beneficial to you. I also, while I'm speaking of guided journaling, meditation, and I feel that there's been a lot of secular pull from meditation where it feels like hippy dippy or, not of Christ. But when you think about the breath, when you think about just breathing in and out, how quickly your body has to settle. And I feel like whenever I just breathe in and out very slowly, that brings me to know, like, this is what the body was meant to do. This is what God intended the body to do, to self-regulate. I think about the early days, the Bible days, when we didn't have all this internet and all this technology. We had a few things. We had that breath. We had to place our hands on our heart to be able to feel and center ourselves, which will bring us back to God, bring us back to our being, to bring it back to our creator, right? To the creator. And being able to breathe is so impactful. I feel like there's sometimes when I'm at work and I'm like, ooh, I just take a few seconds and I just let it in and out real nice and slow. And I don't know if anybody sees me at my job doing it, but I realize I don't care sometimes. So journaling, if you can find a guided prompt, and then using your breath, or if you really want to fall into more of a guided meditation, I totally encourage that. And then lastly, and we don't really talk that much about this, but just doing something that brings you joy. I think that is, I guess I kind of mentioned it when I was talking about cooking some good food. I feel like that is a way to feed into your overall wellness. As I'm learning, you may work a job where you're in the office, or you might have a little hybrid or remote sort of situation. And then you come home and you're like, dog, all I got is like 3 hours to do what I want to do. And how can I maximize this? So when I lather, rinse, and repeat, the whole, working and then coming home and cooking and blah, 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 all over again, I can feel at peace and relaxed. So whether it is a hobby, I'm really admiring the girls that are out here crocheting. I would like that to be my hobby. It is not, but it is a vibe. Whether it's a hobby of writing or, dancing or crochet or whatever the case, finding something that really brings you joy, I feel like that's something that you can incorporate to your overall wellness. Or it could be exercise, because I love a good dance. I love a good Pilates. Those are the top 3 that I can think of for sure.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to Faith in Focus with me, your host, Jaeda G. Can you just give the listeners your social media handles where they can find you, where they can see more of your lifestyle, everything like that?
Sure. I am on primarily on Instagram and TikTok under the handle of Young Black Mrs. MRS. Young Black Mrs. MRS. My website is also youngblackmrs.com. And if you're feeling like, ooh, this vegan stuff sounds kind of interesting, girl, tell me more, you can check out my foodie Instagram, which is Morgane_eats. MORGANE_eats. I throw down a little bit, guys. I'm not going to hold you. On Instagram and TikTok.
Okay, perfect. This has been Faith in Focus with your host, Jaeda G.
Thank you for joining us today on Faith in Focus. We hope the conversations and insights shared have inspired you to live out your faith in powerful and meaningful ways. From the arts to justice and the law to personal reflection, faith has the power to shape our world for the better. Join us next time as we continue to explore the many ways faith-based living impacts our daily lives. Until then, keep the light of faith shining bright, and may your heart be full of peace and purpose, grace and peace. Blessings.